Dynasty Decisions, episode 87. We break down your teams. We break down your trade questions. We break down whether you're ready to rebuild or contend on this channel. Today, we will actually be getting into some free submissions. I know a lot of you guys that have submitted freely have expressed some concern about having your teams not covered. We're getting into a couple in today's video. If you want to submit your team for Dynasty Decisions, of course, site subscribers will skip the line. Flockers and then mother flockers first, and then flockers, and then free submissions. So we're covering 4 site subscribers, 4 free submissions today. But without further ado, Danny, how you doing?
Doing well, doing well. Your boy's a little bit under the weather today from allergies over the cottage, but doesn't make any excuses. We're ready to get into some Dynasty Decision teams like Corey said. And with that being said, let's get into the first one.
So we're going to kick this video off with Josh Slatts' team. He is a Flocker tier subscriber, 12-team PPR, 6 point per passing touchdown with a full point per tight end premium. Jalen Hurts, Justin Fields, Mac Jones is top quarterback. Zach Charbonnet, mainly the running back of note with Khalil Herbert and some other guys. Marquise Brown, Jahan Dotson, Elijah Moore, Rashad Bateman, Nico Collins, and some others at wide receiver. Sam Laporta is his main tight end with Cole Kmet, Juwan Johnson, some other guys there. Doesn't have any picks in the first round of this year's class. It looks like he kind of showcased where he spent them all. Charbonnet at 202, Laporta at 204, etc. But he does have a number of picks in the next 2 draft classes, including an early first potentially in 2024, which I'm assuming is probably his, and then a mid first as well, and then some extra seconds, some extra thirds, and then 3 ones in 2025. So he also has his trades listed here, but what are your thoughts kind of on the team? He says this was an orphan. It was his first season taking over it. And he basically wants to know how he did with the trades, and do we see any other like trades and players to target?
I mean, yeah, looking at the structure of the team right now, obviously you have your quarterbacks completely set for the most part with Jalen Hurts and Justin Fields. Not to mention, especially if Justin Fields does take the leap that people expect for this upcoming season, you could have potentially going into next year 2 top 8 overall picks at the quarterback position. So very strong there. Running backs, obviously headlined by Charbonnet, need some work there once you're fully ready to contend. But I think this is obviously on purpose because you don't want the running back production right now. You know that 2023 is not going to be your peak season. And then once you add those 2024 first-round picks with the early and mid-projected first, your team should look a lot stronger from a pure production standpoint. But overall, I mean, in terms of overall, collection of assets, I think you've done a really good job with this orphan team.
Yeah, so we can break down some of the trades that he's got listed here. On all these trades took place around, just before the draft, just after the draft, around rookie draft season. He sent away Garrett Wilson, 103 and 107 to acquire Jalen Hurts, Marquise Brown, and Elijah Moore. Now, generally speaking, is acquiring a guy like Jalen Hurts usually a good idea? For sure. In your team situation, I don't think I would have done it. Just because you said this was an orphan team, you weren't necessarily in the place to like push your chips into the middle or go out and like compete or whatever. So for me, I think when you're down assets, when you're not in a position to compete and you're not in a position to go out and, sacrifice depth, sacrifice value to go out and acquire a guy like Jalen Hurts, for me, I'm much more focused on hitting on my rookie picks and trying to collect assets and get elite assets that way rather than trade for already elite assets, because usually when you're doing that, it should be when you've already built up a war chest and you're ready to actually make a move to try and contend.
Yeah, I mean, like I will say it is a pretty steep price because if I were to equate this, 103 plus Garrett Wilson on most markets should be about Jalen Hurts. And then you're looking at the 107 for Marquise, Elijah, and Cole Kmet. It's probably pretty fair. And I will say in a little bit of a disagreement with what you said, because I do think he still has 2 2024 first round picks. He still has 3 2025 first. So it's not like he completely got rid of his iron bank. It's not like he has 2 firsts in the next 2 years and he has significant need at running back where he can't really compete and he doesn't have really anything to plug those needs with. So given the fact that he does have some draft capital to be able to add to his flex positions, and now you're looking at it, you have Justin Fields, you have Jalen Hurts for the next 7 to 10 years as your main 2 quarterbacks. And obviously, you have those first round picks to supplement the flex talent. So for me personally, I'm fine with this trade. I will say though, like you kind of said, seems a little bit steep given the circumstances you're in. I probably would have tried to do something different, maybe added a productive player going back rather than the 107, but or maybe even you got someone cheaper than Garrett Wilson. Maybe you add a little bit different of a package. But for me personally, like you kind of said, I don't mind paying for the quarterback, but I also wouldn't have minded if you just stuck and kind of built the thing from the ground up.
Yeah, I just think you would have been in a better position having Garrett Wilson on your team, having Bryce Young or Anthony Richardson at 103, and then at 107 taking Jordan Addison. Your receiver core would be in
Yeah,
very good shape for the long term. You would still have a young quarterback to go along with Justin Fields. And as great as Jalen Hurts is, he's going to score a lot of points for your team, making your own
yeah,
2024 first a little bit worse next year. So for me, I probably
100%.
wouldn't have ponied up for the elite asset because also I think, too, Elijah Moore is no guarantee. Marquise Brown is a guy that you might have to move off of because he might be too productive as well. And not aid your tank as well. So for me, I probably would have stuck with the rookies and the picks and Garrett Wilson. So I'm not a huge fan of that trade, just given where your team was at. The next trade, you sell off Ramondre Stevenson, you get a 2025 first, 2024 second, 2024 third, and the 312. This is a great return for a running back who probably has like a year, 2 years left of high level production as long as he's on his rookie contract. One first would have been a good enough deal for Ramondre Stevenson, in my opinion, given your team situation. So the fact that you got some mid-round picks on top of it was definitely a great trade. And then the final trade here, he sends away Evan Ingram in a second to upgrade to Jahan Dotson, a little bit more of a stable asset. Evan Ingram's actually sneakily kind of old too. So I don't mind that trade whatsoever. So I like the final two trades. I think they aided what you're trying to do with this team. And as much as Jalen Hurts does to some degree as well, I think you would have been better off holding on the first trade. And he also says, general dynasty question: how do you determine if you want to use a future pick to build depth versus pairing with a player to tier up? So I would say, kind of back to my original point, when I'm ready to compete is more likely the time I'm going to do that. Like if you were ready to compete and you used Evan Ingram in a second, for example, to go up and get a better tight end, that would be kind of a situation that I would look at. So, but as like a general rule, for me, you kind of determine when to use a future pick to build depth versus trading up whenever the value's there is kind of the answer to that question. I know that's kind of vague, but like if you can do it, then you should.
How I describe this is how you determine when you want to do that. Your team's going to determine it for you. You're like flat out, your team is going to tell you when you're ready to fully make that move. Because if, quite frankly, you're able to fully objectively analyze your team and say, listen, if I was leaving an underdog fantasy draft with this team, do I think I would have a chance to win my 12-person pool? Do I think I have a chance to potentially win the million? Like, you have to set reasonable expectations for your team based off exactly what the redraft market kind of looks for them. And I know a lot of people will watch our dynasty videos and be like, why do they reference redraft so much? Why do they reference redraft so much? It's like, I want to build my dynasty with as much value as possible. But when we're ready to compete, you have to use a redraft frame of mind for exactly how many points these guys should be able to get you. So, for example, when I'm building up my team, I'm not going to roster a player like Cooper Kupp. But when I'm ready to compete and the rest of my team is telling me, yo, you're ready to compete, you're ready to try to win a championship, I'm way more willing to roster a guy like Cooper Kupp because I know come season time, when he's averaging 24 PPR points per game, my team's going to need that added production. So the best case I would say for you is that once you build up your value, once you have some picks in the iron bank, you have some liquidity to be able to throw around, that's when your team's telling you, okay, go win a championship.
Yeah, and I would say to the second part of your question, when do you want to build depth versus tiering up? It also depends on your scoring format. You're in a start 9 league, so I would say generally speaking, you want to probably have the best starting lineup rather than having a lot of depth for this team. So we spent quite a bit of time on Josh Slatts' team. I think he's in a pretty good spot there. Just continue to build depth, continue to spend your picks. Connor Seed, the next team that we're going to talk about, also a 12-team full PPR 6-point per passing touchdown league with a half-point tight end premium. You guys can see the team there. It is Jalen Hurts, Justin Herbert, and Trey Lance as the top quarterbacks. Pretty set there. A.J. Dillon is his main running back. Very zero RB kind of look there. Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, Darnell Mooney, and others at wide receiver. Dalton Schultz, Daniel Bellinger, a couple other guys there at tight end. Doesn't look like he has any of his rookies listed here, so maybe he has not had the rookie draft yet. 107, 203, 211, 303, 310, etc. And then it looks like he has all of his future picks minus his 2024 third, except he has an extra fourth in 2024 as well. So your thoughts on the team, and then we'll get into some of his questions and kind of where his team stands after the trades as well.
Yeah, I mean, and when you go through this team, clearly the foundation of the squad is set here. Jalen Hurts, Justin Herbert, main 2 quarterbacks. You can't get much better of a top 2 quarterback core with both these guys. I mean, they're both going right now within the top 5s of a lot of startups. So definitely strong core there. Obviously, Trey Lance adding to them. If Trey Lance hits, you have by far the most valuable quarterback core in your entire league. So love what you're able to do there. Running backs obviously is the main point of interest once you're ready to compete. You have A.J. Dillon, who's a good start, but I would say that when you're ready to compete, you're going to need maybe 2 other options there. to fully feel satisfied with your core. Wide receivers built around Jamar Chase, T. Higgins. Again, you have your overall structure of the core complete, but I would say once you're ready to fully compete, you're going to need some talent added to that. You're going to need probably 2 or 3 wide receivers added to this mix in order to feel fully comfortable. And at tight end, you're betting a lot on Dalton Schultz retaining some production, going from one of the best offenses in the league to arguably one of the worst. So I'm a little bit nervous. I would say that if you're in this position, you're kind of in a limbo spot. You're kind of in a spot where you don't know if you're going to be able to compete with the top teams, but you also have such strong foundational pieces that I don't think you can fully tank.
Yeah, this is one of the worst positions to be in Dynasty, in my opinion, because it's great to have these elite assets. Chase, Herbert, Hurts, those guys are so awesome to have on your team. But when they're all you have and you don't have like a boatload of picks to replenish the roster, I mean, you have some mid-round picks this year, but nothing like really crazy. Once you add Addison to this team, maybe you add some more wide receivers at 203 and 211 and that kind of thing. You're in a bit of a bind. You're going to need to hit on your mid-round picks, which is never usually something you want to rely on because these players don't usually hit at a super, super high rate. As confident as, we feel about our drafting abilities, we feel confident about our first round drafting abilities, not necessarily our second and third round drafting abilities in rookie drafts. So for me, I personally would sell Trey Lance because if Trey Lance flops, he's going to sink your roster even more and you're going to have an even tougher time replenishing your depth. If you believe in Trey Lance and you want to stick it out, and you want to hold and hope that you can say, he lists in his comments that he would love to be able to just sell Trey Lance once he hits, but he could flop kind of thing. So for me, I don't really love the idea of going after Jalen Hurts. He said he made a trade big time, like traded some assets and going after Jalen Hurts.
He got a great value
on
for
his
it,
team.
though.
What's up?
I just saw the trade. He got a great value on it.
He did get a great value for it, but I'm just saying, given his team situation, I think it's probably not the type of move that I would make because now you're kind of caught in a bind, like I said, trying to be able to replenish depth on this roster. And I would potentially consider shopping one of my elite assets, maybe Chase, maybe, Herbert, whatever, just to see if I can replenish some depth. But at the same time, you don't want to sell low on these guys. So that's why I think it's one of the worst positions to be in Dynasty because you know how much they should go for on the market. You don't want to sell them for less than, 3/1 of value for Jamar Chase. But sometimes you can't get that. And you're kind of just stuck with the asset and hoping you can hit on your mid-round picks.
Yeah, it is tricky. I would say like you're mainly behind the 8 ball at wide receiver in terms of where I want to be because you have a 3 wide receiver start, 2 flex league. You have a very, very big advantage, obviously, with Chase and Higgins, the two Cincinnati Bengals guys. But after that, if you were to tell me that Darnell Mooney is an every week starter for you, if you were to tell me that McCole Hardman was one of your main flexes, like it's tricky, honestly. Like you have, again, like I said, the foundation of the team to be in place, but usually when you're in this sort of position, you have some pick equity to be able to add to the team. And in your case, you just really don't.
Yeah. So some of the trades you made, I think were good, though. I mean, you selling the 112 for a future first, that's usually always a good idea.
Move.
Worst case scenario, that's the 112 in 2024. Best case scenario, it's like a mid first or something like that. And then you parlay that pick away, though, and sell it for the 107 using a 2024 third, which I think is pretty solid. If that's going to be a mid to late 2024 first, it's probably a contender's first round pick. You get yourself probably Jordan Addison there at 107, maybe JSN slides to that point in time, and you're able to kind of net a profit. You basically, I'm sure Danny's right, basically about to say, all you did was move from 112 to 107 using a 2024 third.
Yeah, like you just moved from the 112 to the 107 using a 2024 third. Again, different owners, I'm assuming you made these moves with, but if you were to tell me right now that I can go from my 112 and my Will Levis, Dalton Kincaid, Michael Mayer, Devon A-Chain tier, and I can go up and get Jordan Addison, I'm taking it every day of the week.
Yeah, exactly. And then this was the Hurts trade we were talking about where you trade Pittman 103 and 108 for Jalen Hurts. So essentially you trade Pittman, one of Bryce Young or Anthony Richardson, and Quentin Johnston most likely for Jalen Hurts. A steep price to pay. You give away 2 foundational type of wide receivers and a young quarterback for Jalen Hurts. Again, in your situation when my team was lacking depth and I kind of needed to hit on my picks and kind of build out a team that way, I probably would have just held. But I do think that's, at face value, that's a good trade for Jalen Hurts.
Yep. No, I would agree with that. But overall, like we were kind of saying, just kind of stick the process here. It is tricky. I would definitely gauge what those main leverage pieces on your team would net, because as much as I want to keep the nucleus of this team together because it's such a strong nucleus, I just don't think you have the arsenal to be able to add around it if you were to do so.
Yeah, and maybe mid-season when you get to a point when you're like 203 wide receiver that you took and your 211 wide receiver that you took are like wide receiver twos or something, then you can maybe talk yourself into, okay, once I spend my 2024 capital, I should have enough running back talent on this team to be able to maybe make a house money type of season. But like I said, Trey Lance is probably somebody I'm putting on the block, kind of gauging the market on one of those Bengals receivers to see what I can get for them as well. Replenish some future picks maybe in 2024 and 2025. But we can move on to the next team here, which is from Andrew Strout. He said he's aware that this is a pretty good team, so he doesn't need any overarching advice. He basically says the big thing is what to do with the picks. Obviously, Bijan, JSN, Gibbs would be great for the team. Just wondering if he's better off moving the 102, 103, and or one of the tight ends for established guys. So you guys can see the team there. It's a 12-team PPR league. Lamar Jackson is his main quarterback. It is a single quarterback, so that's pretty much all he needs. Tony Pollard, Austin Eckler, Alexander Madison, Antonio Gibson, Jalen Waddle, Chris Olave, Devontae Adams, Christian Watson, Calvin Ridley. All you guys can see how good this team is. Kyle Pitts and Mark Andrews, along with Chigakonkwo, 101, 102, 103. You're going to add, like you said, Bijan, JSN, and Gibbs to this team. There's nothing I would do with this team, realistically. He basically is wondering, like he said, if he's better off moving the 102/103 or one of them, whatever the case is, for an established piece.
The one thing I would say is, so hypothetically, let's just say the 101, the 102 you use on Bijan Robinson and you use on Jahmyr Gibbs. And given the context of this team, I think that would be more than fine to do. The one move I would maybe say you could potentially do with this type of team, given the depth you have at wide receiver, is take the, Devontae Adams or the Christian Watson or whatever,
Eckler.
plus the 103, plus Eckler or whatever, and maybe see if you can get Justin Jefferson with that.
Yeah, I would say trying to offload myself of some of your, even though you're contending, you have the assets to be able to replenish this thing with young players that'll still help you contend. So for me, I'm looking at Adams and Eckler as the two guys that stand out to me as guys that I think could lose value. So for me, I would take Eckler, take Adams, go to somebody that has Chase or has Jefferson or whatever, and maybe that's all it costs you. Like, you never know. Like, some people in redraft-centric formats will see Eckler and Adams and be like, oh, man, both of these guys are top 15 redraft picks right now, and sell you somebody that's like a foundational asset. Realistically, maybe you have to throw in,
The 103.
the 103, and maybe you get another young receiver back on top of Chase or something like that. Then that would definitely make some sense. For me, I'm looking to kind of make this thing more longevity, because you have the short-term assets to be able to compete. Again, you don't want to completely sacrifice your winning window. If you can't sell Eckler for anything, just hold on to him. If you can't sell Adams for anything, just hold on to him. But I would look to be proactive with this team, making sure that I can compete for a number of years, not just, next year my team starts to fall off. And worst case scenario, you just spend the picks on 101, 102, 103, add Bijan, Gibbs, and JSN to this team. And also, to your point, should I move one of those rookie picks? I would probably spend the first two on the running backs and maybe move the JSN pick.
Yep. No, I would agree with that. Not to mention, if you do spend the 2 first on the running backs, and it gives you even more leverage from your team perspective to be able to move Eckler, because you do have some replaced production there. So that's what I would say too as well. Mark Andrews, Austin Eckler, Devontae Adams are the main chess pieces I'd be willing to move. And like we were kind of mentioning, go after Jamar Chase, go after Justin Jefferson, go after an elite needle moving type of asset, because quite frankly, you've built up the depth to the point where you are telling, or your team is telling you, that this is a buy window. Your team is telling you that it wants production. This is a team that, point blank simple, even if you did nothing, should be able to be a top 3 team in your league.
Yeah, and Bijan and Gibbs is enough running back talent. Even if you sold Eckler off, Bijan, Gibbs, Pollard, Madison, and Gibson is more than enough depth at running back. So I'm cool, like Danny said, going after Jefferson, Chase, Lamb, A.J. Brown, whoever you need to go after at the top of the wide receiver board to make yourself a better contender. He also has some trades listed here. He basically got Pollard for like 2 seconds, which I think 2 late seconds at that, I think was a great move for sure. And then you sold your late first, I'm assuming this was your first, for Christian Watson as well. Good investment to a young receiver. Get yourself some youth there, because outside of Olave and Waddle, you didn't have a ton of young upside pieces behind Ridley and Adams. So I think that was a good move as well. And I've actually made a similar move in a couple leagues where I had like older wide receiver core. So overall, your team's in great spot. You pretty much could do nothing and just compete with this thing, but I would shop your aging assets, like I said. We can move on to the next team, the final Flocker submission from Shinbin here. 12-team PPR, 4-point per passing touchdown, half-point tight end premium, super flex league. Daniel Jones, Kenny Pickett, Mac Jones is the quarterback, so a little weak there. Cam Akers is main running back, and then not a whole lot going on after him. Garrett Wilson, DK Metcalf, Drake London, George Pickens, Sky Moore. I'm pretty sure my Bush League Dynasty Best Ball team has literally this exact receiver core, which is funny. And then Kyle Pitts at the tight end spot. He also does have listed a bunch of early picks, though. 101, 102, 103, 107, 109, 201, 209, and then all of his future picks, including a couple extra twos in 2024. So very clear that he kind of punted this thing out. And, went with some younger assets, built up the wide receiver core, has a stable tight end in Kyle Pitts, and he's just intending to spend his rookie picks. And that's exactly what he should probably go out and do. Add Bijan, add Gibbs, add JSN, add 107, add Jordan Addison. Or sorry, this is a super flex league. Add Bijan, add Bryce Young, add Anthony Richardson at 107. Maybe you add Jordan Addison at 109. You could add maybe a Zach Charbonnet type or something, or just go with Zay Flowers or whatever the case is. You got a lot of assets to be able to spend here. I wouldn't even be married to spending all of them. I would potentially look to make some trades either for future capital or for current, quarterback talent.
Yeah, I was going to say 101, you're spending it on Bijan Robinson with this team because your wide receivers are set, because your tight end is set, and because you have moves to make that you can make to upgrade your quarterback. The two moves that I'm thinking of that are glaring off my head are see what Daniel Jones plus the 103/102 and see what Kenny Pickett plus the other pick, see what they can get you on the open market for Kyler Murray, Deshaun Watson, Justin Fields, and if you can get a tier above that, that is obviously the best case scenario. But if you can get two top 15 level quarterback assets using the 102 and 102, 103 plus Daniel Jones and Kenny Pickett, then you are absolutely set. Like if it only costs Kenny Pickett plus the 103 to move up to Kyler Murray, I'd be willing to do that in a heartbeat. And I do think the market would be able to give you that type of deal. I do think Daniel Jones plus the 102 in most leagues, given how valued Anthony Richardson is to the consensus market, that might be able to get you Justin Fields.
I think you're underselling it. I think in some leagues, 103 is enough for Kyler Murray by itself, let alone with Daniel Jones and Kenny Pickett involved. And I think you could probably get to Justin Herbert, Trevor Lawrence, or Joe Burrow with Daniel Jones plus one of those picks, especially if that person maybe has a team like the one we talked about a couple minutes ago, where they're not necessarily, with enough depth to be able to make a competitive push. Maybe they have an elite asset like Joe Burrow and they're not able to kind of build around him yet. Adding Bryce Young plus Daniel Jones might be kind of enticing to a team like that, especially if they're in need of quarterbacks. So you have a lot of flexibility with this team. You have so many picks. You can spend them. You could not spend them. Worst case scenario, you just draft Bijan, Bryce, Anthony Richardson, and kind of let this team develop, make some trades in season to maybe move off of Daniel Jones or Kenny Pickett, especially if your rookies are developing. And this will be a house money team this year, and you'll probably be ready to compete come 2024 when you spend your own picks there.
Yeah, no, I agree with you overall, though. I mean, I think what you're able to do with this team, obviously very strong squad. You still have all of your picks, including 2 extra seconds in 2024, it looks like. And like we kind of said, outside of maybe fully establishing the quarterback position, you got some upside there. But if you can turn some of those assets into some high ticket type of quarterbacks, and then you're really in a position where you have Bijan and Akers and maybe only need one other running back to be a top team, given the strength you have a wide receiver and given the advantage at tight end. I think you can turn this team into a dominant squad, honestly, by your rookie draft.
Yeah, for sure. He has some trades listed here, and you can kind of see why he's been able to do the Lord's work, but to some degree. He said he sold his first during the season, even though he went 0-14. So I don't exactly know if you got it back at some point, but it said he sold his first, got another 2023 first, which ended up being 102. He must have somehow got his own first back because he does have the 101 listed on this roster. Yep. So, I mean, getting your own first for the 102. It's his 2024 first. I'm actually blind. Okay, so he sold his own 2024 first, and he got the 102 for it. I think even if you intended your first to be like a tanking caliber first, securing an absolute certainty 102, you now have the flexibility that knowing you don't have your own first, you could kind of push this thing a little bit more to make sure that you can be a little competitive. That pick's not going to be like 103 or something next year. And then you sold Burks, Higbee in a second for Kyle Pitts and what I believe was a half-point tight end premium as well. That's a very good trade. No questions asked. And then the 110 you sold for a potentially early first next year.
Am I baked or am I reading this correctly? So you basically upgraded the 2024 first that you had, because you mentioned it's your first versus one that has potential to be early. And I'll tell you right now, your first does not have any potential to be early based on the team that I'm looking at. So you upgraded the standing of a 2024 first, and you upgraded the 110 to the 102, and all it costed you was 2 2023 third round picks. Am I reading that right?
Yeah, pretty much.
Wow.
Yeah, he also has one last question here. He said planning to take Bijan, AR Young, first 3 picks. Should he use other capital to move up for Gibbs? I would say if it's cost effective to do so, if you can move up from 107 to 104, 105 to take Jahmyr Gibbs, and all it costs you is like one of the extra seconds that you have in 2024, and it's like one of the later ones, then I think that's a fine move to make. But I probably wouldn't force it, knowing that your team is not really in a position to compete quite yet. He says depth is pretty shallow in this league. My team is full, and I'm currently set to add 8 rookies. What would you guys drop as well? He has players listed to drop there. I mean, you can clip Zach Wilson, Davis Mills, Velus Jones, Isaiah Hodgins, Brevin Jordan, guys like that. It doesn't really matter. So we can move on to the next team here, which is from Paul Braun here. This is the first free submission of the video, 12-team PPR league, Superflex, Allen, Herbert, Lance, pretty loaded at the quarterback spot there. Gibbs, Swift, Akers, Bigsby, and others at running backs. Chase, Garrett Wilson, Godwin, Hollywood Brown, Quentin Johnson, Rashad Bateman, very deep at wide receiver. Also added the top 2 tight ends from this year's class, Kincaid and Michael Mayer, who he somehow got at the 305 in his rookie draft. And then he has kind of listed here also where he spent his rookie picks. So pretty clear to me that this is a well-balanced team. He's got kind of like a house money running back core to go along with a very competitive rest of his roster.
Yeah, no, I agree with it. And I'm also looking at some of these deals, and it's easy to see why. I love what you're able to do here. First one, Watson, 110 and the 103 for Josh Allen. Well, I just said in a previous deal that I was comfortable with evaluation of Garrett Wilson plus the 103 equaling Jalen Hurts. So the fact that this is for Josh Allen, and I would much rather Garrett Wilson over Christian Watson, as much as I like Christian Watson, give me the Josh Allen side, especially given the context of your team.
Yeah, that's a great move. You had some assets, you had some ammunition to make a big move for a splash quarterback, and then definitely paid off there. Sent away the 107, which somebody spent on Will Levis. Must be Will Levis's family. 403 there as well, and he got QJ and Michael Mayer. So you trade down one spot for somebody to probably a quarterback needy team that was panicking. Come up and get Will Levis. You get the better option in Quentin Johnston, in my opinion, and you get a 305 pick that ends up being Michael Mayer, who absolutely should not have been on the board at the 305.
Yeah, no, I think you absolutely stole that. The final deal, I think, is the closest. I would probably lean the other side, giving pure value. But I mean, like if you're a Kincaid guy, 111's fair for him, I would say.
Yeah, I mean, the 208 Roschon Johnson, who I have ranked a little bit closer to Kincaid than that would indicate. And then also your own 2024 second, which could potentially be about a mid-round pick. I think that was probably a fair deal. I don't really hate it for either side. He said the first trade was pre-draft, but the second and third were on the clock. So what are your thoughts on the moves? We kind of just gave those. He said, should I roll with my quarterback room or move my 2024 first for a third quarterback? If I were you, I would offload Lance because you guys know I'm not very high on him. I would potentially see what you can get. Maybe somebody's really high on him in your league. There's usually one truther at least in every single league. Maybe you can get Kenny Pickett in a second for Trey Lance right now in some of your leagues right now, and I would probably do that if I were you. He also says, can I compete or do I need to wait one more year? You are in a house money contending window, my friend. You probably are betting a lot on your young running backs to be able to carry you. But at the same time, if they hit, if Gibbs is a RB1 his rookie season, if Swift's giving you like RB2 production, Akers giving you RB2 production, this team could win first season. And you still have your first as a luxury to be able to move mid-season if maybe you need to add another running back or add another piece to this team, because Chase, Wilson, Godwin, Hollywood, maybe QJ has a early breakout in his career, Rashad Bateman, maybe a bounce back. The only thing that you're really depending on is your young tight ends and your young running backs. And if those guys hit, you're going to be able to compete.
Yeah, no, I'd agree with you there. I think this team is very well set up. And like Corey kind of said, if things break right, I definitely see you can be a very heavy contender in this league, especially given the quarterback advantage that you do hold with Josh Allen and Herbert in particular. And then obviously if Trey Lance takes a step, you have 3 of the most difference-making quarterbacks in fantasy football.
Yeah, but Trey Lance won't take a step probably. So
we'll see.
Yeah, well, me and Danny disagree on that. So number 6 is Jordan's team here. We're going to get into this one, 10-team league. PPR, 4-point per passing touchdown, is a 1 quarterback format as well. Trevor Lawrence is the main guy with Pickett and Will Levis in reserve. James Cook, Roschon, Tajay Spears, Dwayne McBride, pretty zero RB type of running back core there. Does have Drake London, Treylon Burks, Jahan Dotson, Michael Pittman, Elijah Moore, Marvin Mims. Very young wide receiver core with Greg Dulcich, Sam Laporta, and Chiga Okonkwo at tight end. Does not have, he spent all of his 2023 picks already, so he didn't have his first or his second or anything by the looks of it, but he did have some mid-round picks. I think Roschon at 302, Tajay at 301, Laporta at 303, and Mims at 209, all good values there. Does have what looks to be the trifecta of the 2024 class locked down with 3 firsts all listed early there. If those end up being 1-1, 1-2, and 1-3, you're going to be adding Marvin. It's a one quarterback league. So you're going to be adding Marvin Harrison, Raheem Sanders, and, Agbuka or whatever other running back. Maybe Henderson has a bounce back season or something. That could definitely be massive for your team. So this is a very good, 1 year punt that you have kind of structured here. You have very zero RB guys, good young wide receiver core with some upside, good young tight end core with some upside, a stable franchise quarterback in Trevor Lawrence. This is a very, very well-constructed team, and some of these trades kind of indicate why. You offload Saquon Barkley from a competitive window, I'm presuming, for Drake London in an early to mid-second round pick. It's a one quarterback second rounder, so it's a little bit undervalued, but I would much rather have Drake London straight up than Saquon.
Yeah, give me Drake London pretty easily there. You took that guy to the woodshed. I don't know how you got Drake London plus for Saquon Barkley, a 26-year-old running back, but I mean, so be it, man. We will take the value anytime it is offered to us. And going on to this next deal, Dak Prescott, DK Metcalf, Brian Robinson, the early-ish 24 second, early to mid 2024 second in exchange for Trevor Lawrence, Elijah Moore, the 203, the 204, the 206, and the 208. So if we're equating it, one quarterback league. So obviously, regardless if it's a one quarterback or one quarterback or super flex, Trevor Lawrence over Dak Prescott in that format. But for ease sake, let's just see what it would look like. So Dak Prescott, Trevor Lawrence, let's just say they're not in the deal right now. Obviously, you lean Trevor Lawrence though. DK Metcalf, Brian Robinson, early second in exchange for Elijah Moore and 4 seconds. I would say you would slightly lean DK Metcalf there, but when you're equating the difference between Lawrence and Prescott, given the age complex, versus the difference between the Elijah Moore and the seconds versus DK Metcalf package, I do favor the Trevor Lawrence side here.
Yeah, I think you can cancel out the 2024 early to mid-second on the Prescott side with Lawrence there, because I think Lawrence is probably at least an early to mid-second in one quarterback more valuable than Dak Prescott. So then it's basically DK and Brian Robinson for Elijah Moore and 4-2s. I think Elijah Moore 203 and 204 is about equivalent to DK Metcalf, and then the 2-2s for Brian Robinson. It's a pretty fair deal overall, but I like what you were able to do, getting yourself a stable franchise quarterback and some dart throws there. Final deal, I guess you made these in succession right before the rookie draft. This one was right before the NFL draft that you made. 2023 109 in one quarterback leagues, probably not a super, super valuable pick. The 2024 mid-first that you were holding, it looks like you had 5 ones at one point. And you acquire Treylon Burks, Jahan Dotson, James Cook, a mid-second, and a random second in 2025. So for me, Jahan Dotson equals the 109, at least. Maybe Burks equals the 109, whatever one you want to cancel out there. And then the other one kind of equals the other first, especially if you throw the 2025 second on their side for sure. And then you got a free James Cook and a free second rounder in 2024 or 2025.
Yeah, that's basically how I sum it up in a one quarterback league. If you want to equate the 109 and the 2024 first for Treylon Burks and Jahan Dotson, that's about equivalent for me. And then you get a free James Cook in 2 seconds. So definitely like your side there. But overall, I mean, if you're looking at this team, it's pretty clear what you're going to be doing. This team is stacked all around. You have really good top end building blocks at wide receiver. At this point, like Corey kind of said, just wait until next year's rookie draft. Go get Marvin Harrison Jr. Go get Raheem Sanders. Go get Travion Henderson, and then going into 2024, go win the championship.
Yeah, exactly. You're in a house money year this year. You're going to be in a competitive window as soon as you got those rookie running backs running the ball for you. So definitely a prime textbook example of aligning your winning window with how you're gonna want to build this thing. Because by the time you get to a 2024, hopefully Drake London's in maybe a little bit better of a situation, one season outlook. Maybe Treylon Burks has had a breakout season. Maybe Jahan Dotson's had a breakout season. Elijah Moore maybe has bounced back. Michael Pittman maybe has not a rookie quarterback throwing to him this year. That would definitely be advantageous for your team. So let's get into the second to last team of this video. We have from Antz here, a 10-team half PPR, 4-point per passing touchdown Superflex league with a 1-point tight end premium. I'm assuming that just means full PPR for tight ends. Lamar Jackson and Patrick Mahomes, along with Kenny Pickett, Breece Hall, Damian Harris and company, Isaiah Pacheco, and some other guys there at running back, with Tank Bigsby and Chase Brown buried at the bottom of the bench. Jamar Chase, Chris Olave, Michael Pittman, George Pickens, some other guys there, Rashee Rice, Bateman, all those dudes. Greg Dulcich is his main tight end with some other upside guys there in the wings. Has his 2023 picks listed, but I'm pretty sure he spent them already because he has rookies listed intertwined there. And then he does not have his first or his second or his third in 2024, and doesn't have his second or his third in 2025 either. But He said he had multiple years of poor trading, terrible drafting that crippled his team. And he said he's been watching his channel. It's helped him become a better dynasty manager. So we're glad we were able to help you out with that. He said this was in a 2 tight end lineup league, but it was a unanimous vote to change back to 1 tight end because tight ends are terrible. You love to see that. I was wondering how you guys would continue to improve his team, or would you just ride the season out as is? He said there's no real monster teams in the league. So pretty, a lot of parity in this league. A lot of guys pretty similar in terms of their team strengths.
Honestly, looking at this team, I see Lamar Jackson, I see Patrick Mahomes, I see Jamar Chase, and I see adequate depth around them, especially in a start 10. Go try to win the championship, honestly. Like you have, assuming the only thing I would say is if Breece Hall's not ready to play week 1, maybe you'll have some worry about running back for the first few weeks. But I do think the collection of Pacheco, Gus Edwards, Deontay Foreman, David Harris, they should be able to get you some validity there, albeit in a more zero RB type of format. But when you have Lamar Jackson, when you have Patrick Mahomes, when you have Jamar Chase, Chris Olave, Michael Pittman, Rashad Bateman, George Pickens, Greg Dulcich, et cetera there, I think you should be able to weather the storms. Overall, I mean, there's not really much I have to add here aside from just kind of see what the team's telling you in season. If you want to make a move, you still have, of course, your 2025 first to be able to move if you need to in season. But I wouldn't, rush and move that pick going into the year saying, oh, you know what, let me add a running back right now, because I do think there is a possible upside scenario where Breece Hall looks like every bit of the stud we expect him to be. And I do think you get enough production from those other guys. But having that first round pick in the barrel to be able to use anytime you need to is going to be clutch for your contending window.
Yeah, I mean, you could also potentially try moving somebody. Like we're not high on Rashee Rice, for example. If somebody's buying into Rashee Rice, and I know you have Mahomes, so you probably want to keep them together, but you could potentially just sell Rashee Rice straight up for David Montgomery, and he could help you get by while Breece Hall's kind of coming back from the injury, because you don't have your first or your second or your third. So you're kind of pigeonholed into trying to make this a little bit more competitive than I would like. If you still had all your picks next year, I would just say this was a house money team. And then in 2024, you'd be ready to compete, but you don't have your first rounder or your second rounder or your third rounder. So for me, I would potentially look to make a move to get some kind of insurance policy. But I think Damian Harris and Isaiah Pacheco and company would be decent enough to ride out if you had to for a few weeks while Breece is coming back.
Yep, I agree with you there. We can look at some of the deals he was able to do this offseason. So he sent away Geno Smith in exchange for the 206 and the 306. Given the quarterback market, I guess in a 10-team league, this is more like the 204 and the 304 or 302, whatever it is. So more stomachable there. I probably would have wanted a little bit more for Geno, given the fact that you're ready to compete. You probably could have parlayed that into maybe Tyler Lockett and David Montgomery or something like that. I think would have been a reasonable deal. I've seen, contender teams make when they have an extra quarterback to be able to expend. And 206, 306, I just simply don't think move the needle quite enough for you, because I'm assuming at the 206, you probably added Rashee Rice, and at the 30 or maybe Tank Bigsby, and then at the 306 you probably added
Tank,
the other one, or Chase Brown. So for me personally, I probably would have wanted a little bit more for Geno.
Yeah, no, I'm on the same page there as well. I think Geno, you would have been better suited to go for a contending running back of some kind. I think is probably what I would have done differently there. But it's a 10-team league. Geno has less value in that kind of format, and like you said, those picks are a little bit higher in a 10-team format as well. Yep. So not a terrible trade, but I think I probably prefer the Geno Smith side. This one's really interesting because I think when you think about this from a startup value perspective, Patrick Mahomes, obviously my 101 or 102 for most people, depending on who you prefer over him, and Josh Allen. Justin Fields is shortly thereafter, 109 area. And then Garrett Wilson's typically about a mid-second round pick. So if you're on the clock in a startup draft, Patrick Mahomes going at the top of the draft, Justin Fields at the end of the first round, Garrett Wilson in the mid-second round, would you take the late first round and the mid-second round pick for the high pick in Patrick Mahomes? This is kind of an interesting discussion. Obviously, when you made this trade, Garrett, you were projecting forward. So this is a really risky trade to make, in my opinion, because Garrett Wilson has already kind of, ascended into this high value guy. So it's kind of not worked out from that perspective for you, but getting Patrick Mahomes is usually never a bad investment.
Yeah, so it looks like he made this trade, last month, so May 10th. So yeah, if you're looking at it, I would say from a startup perspective, you probably would take Fields and Wilson. I would say if it was a little bit after, if it was the 111, 112 plus a mid to late second, in most startup valuation, you would probably just take Patrick Mahomes then. But because Justin Fields is in it, and he has the upside to be a upper echelon type of quarterback, you'd probably favor that side in a startup scenario. But given the context of your team, that you're strong at wide receiver, that you have a nice building block at tight end, and that you have a lot of upside, especially with Breece Hall at running back, getting Patrick Mahomes to pair with Lamar Jackson, I will never say no to.
Yeah, those two guys are going to carry your team. And I actually misread that trade as occurring on October 5th, but it occurred on May 10th, like you said, because he's got them listed chronologically. And then you sold your 309 for a bunch of fourth rounders and in the rookie draft. I mean, sure, whatever. Not really a very relevant trade, but I guess you got some value on top of it. Throw some darts at some running backs and some looks like you probably got Schoonmaker and Michael Wilson, some of the guys there. Stenson Bennett might have been one of those picks as well. But overall, very strong team. Definitely maybe make a move for a contending running back if the price is right. But we can move on to the final team of the video, which is from Briana Roberts, 10-team PPR, 1 quarterback league, 4-point per passing touchdown. Watson, Kyler Murray is the top 2 guys. Swift, Pollard, Rashad Penny, Brian Robinson at running back. Garrett Wilson, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Chris Olave, Michael Pittman Jr., Deontay Johnson, Treylon Burks, Gabe Davis, Donovan Peoples-Jones, and Darnell Mooney. So very strong at wide receiver. Pat Freiermuth and David Njoku as the main tight ends. I do not see any rookies listed here, so it looks like you haven't had your rookie draft yet, and somehow, despite this team, you have the 103, 104, 106, 110, 202, 206, 305, and 406. If I was you, I'm looking to get up to Bijan Robinson. That's absolutely what I'm looking to do because you have the ammunition to do it. You already have a ready-to-win wide receiver core, a ready-to-win tight end core, ready-to-win quarterback core. The only thing you're really missing is probably a stud running back in Bijan and maybe even Gibbs too if you can get up to him as well.
Yeah, no, I'm reading through some of the comments as well. So let's get through some of the deals that Briana was able to make. So first one, Eckler and a 2024 third for Pittman in the 103. Like, you put Pittman on the other side, I would rather have the 103. So easy money getting both Pittman and the 103 there. Love the valuation. In this deal, 109 plus AJ Dillon for the 106. People might say, well, why are you giving up AJ Dillon to move up 3 spots? But when you're actually contextualizing the board and you realize the difference in the 109, who for us is like Zay Flowers, plus AJ Dillon, for the difference between that and JSN or Gibbs.
Well, it's a 1 quarterback league. So the 109 is probably like in quarterback territory / it's like Charbonnet or somebody like that.
It's 2 quarterback.
Oh, it is a 2 quarterback league. Okay, I'm actually baked. Never mind. I saw the super flex marker wasn't listed there, but it is actually a 2 quarterback league. So you're correct there. The 106 definitely a better asset than the 109. Zay Flowers versus JSN or Gibbs, like you said. Maybe Stroud falls to that point.
Yeah, no, 100%. And parlaying AJ Dillon to make sure you get a stud top 4 round type of startup pick. Like, sign me up all day, every day there. You get the 106. Love that move. In terms of this trade, I will say, so you give up the 105, the 305, the 24 second, and Jeff Wilson. I don't really know if you needed to do this, to be honest, because in 104, I'm assuming, like, if you're making this type of deal, it would be for a quarterback. But given the state of your quarterback room with Watson, with Murray already in town, and knowing that you have the 103 to be able to add one if you needed to at that point, I probably would have just stuck and picked, Gibbs and then taken the other one, JSN, at the 106 for me personally.
Yeah, it's difficult. I mean, she maps out her quarterback or her rookie draft kind of landscape with Bijan's probably going to go 101. She says that the guy wants Stroud at 2. So that means that Bryce Young is going to be there for her at 103 and Anthony Richardson will be there at 104. Hence why she made the trade to go up to 104 and then JSN or Gibbs at 106. I mean, I don't know what Houston Texans fans taking CJ Stroud at 102, but that's good news for you because you're going to get some good value. And she also says, like, I have a potential deal in place to go out and trade for CeeDee Lamb, but the manager's giving me the runaround. I think just take the value that you can get. I mean, if you can add Bryce Young and Anthony Richardson as well as, Gibbs or JSN at 6, for me, I would like to secure Jahmyr Gibbs if I was in your position. If like, you don't want to obviously take Jahmyr Gibbs over Anthony Richardson at 4 if he's there, but if it costs you like a little bit to move up 1 spot to 105 to make sure that you get Jahmyr Gibbs, I don't think that's a terrible move. And, you can trade that 106 pick maybe to somebody that's rebuilding. Maybe they'll want JSN in the long term.
Yeah, and I mean, worst case scenario too, I would also see after your 103 to 106 type of run, would you move all of your okay, that might be a little hyperbolic, but can you move like all of these last picks, the 110, the 202, the 206, the 305, and the 406, and get a 2024 first and second?
If I'm in her position, I'm going for contending piece. You can win with this team. So I would probably trade that 110, 202 for like Josh Jacobs or something.
Yeah. like obviously try to buy contending pieces, but I'm saying if you can't buy anything on the clock, like they're not willing to move their veteran pieces, try to move that pick into 2024 capital so then you could do that in season because people are more willing once they're tanking hypothetically to get rid of some of those top point producing type of players. So
Yeah,
that's
I
what I
think
would say.
however we look at this team, you're in a good spot. Like you're going to
Yes.
have 4 stud quarterbacks, you're going to have a bunch of stud wide receivers, and all you really need to do is kind of figure out your other position groups. Maybe go out and see how much Kyle Pitts will cost to acquire in this league as well, because with Freiermuth and Njoku, you have a tight end to give them back. You also have the capital to be able to do it. There's some league markets I'm sure you can trade Pat Freiermuth in the 110 for Kyle Pitts. I've seen some slander on the timeline about that, man. So I bet you could probably do that in some kind of league formats.
I was just going to say something like that. Maybe you have to add one of the 2s or something to get it done. Like I've seen people throw away Kyle Pitts. Like I've seen T. Higgins go for Kyle Pitts plus in some leagues, which is ridiculous.
I've seen worse than that, dude. I've seen people say that that Kyle Pitts shouldn't even be a top 3 dynasty tight end.
Yeah, that's ridiculous. People are actually off their rockers when they say that shit.
Yes. Side note aside from the Kyle Pitts slander, we are very much envious of your position because I don't know if you build this thing the right way, add the players that you need to do, make the moves that you need to do. This can be a monster. This can be an irreversible damage that you're going to cause to your league mates because you're going to take over this league for the next 4 to 5 years. Because in addition to all the players that you've built up, all of your players, sans like some of your running backs, are young too. So they're going to be good for a long time. And in that case too, maybe see what you can do with Pollard or whatever. If you need to get to a younger running back, you could definitely do that. But either way, thank you guys for making it to the end of the video. If you did, if you enjoyed what you saw here, leave a like, subscribe to the channel. If you're new around here, comment any of your thoughts down below. If you want to submit your team for Dynasty Decisions, like I said, you can go ahead and do that in the Google form down below. You can list if you are a Mother Flocker tier subscription on Flock Fantasy, you will skip the line entirely and we'll cover your team on the next video. Flocker tiers will skip the line from the free submissions, and then free submissions will pile them up. We're, going back, a couple people had submitted their teams from this video a while ago. So some of these guys I submitted in like March, February, April at some point, and we're just getting to their teams now. So I will say, if you want to get your team covered ASAP, you have a rookie draft coming up, or you just need advice, definitely check out the site to get our dynasty rankings as well as first priority dynasty decisions as well. So with that being said, peace out, and we'll talk to you soon.